Friends, our second reading today comes from Mark chapter 1, verses 9 through 15. Listen now for the word of the Lord. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as he was coming out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove on him. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." And the Spirit immediately drove him into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness 40 days, tempted by Satan. And he was with the wild beasts, and the angels waited on him. Now after John was arrested, Jesus came to Galilee, proclaiming the good news of God, and saying, "The time is fulfilled, and the kingdom of God has come near. Repent and believe in the good news." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Mark's words for us today move quickly from the baptism to the wilderness to Jesus' proclamation that the kingdom of God has come near, and we are to repent and to believe in this good news, beginning, middle, and end, all neatly tied up into 6 verses here. Now, January 8th of this year, we celebrated Baptism of the Lord Sunday, and that's when we celebrated that Jesus' formal ministry truly began. That was that moment when the heavens were torn apart and the dove came down. Some people would even call that Jesus' ordination, so to speak. Now today is the first Sunday in Lent, as we just showed the children, and I'd like to turn our attention to the middle part of our verses for today, where Jesus is driven out into the wilderness. Now, Lent is celebrated as that wilderness time, and it's 40 days in length, reminding us of Jesus' 40 days in the wilderness. The wilderness is used throughout the Bible as a sort of a place for finding one's own place within God. It's our place to find that God is with us through our spiritual growth, our discovery, and our changes. And in our passage, the Spirit, remember it was the Spirit that drove Jesus into that wilderness. So when we find ourselves in that wilderness place, it is not because we are alone, but because the Spirit has taken us there and into that time. Now, in a sense, the wilderness truly is a place of God. Our God is a wild God who is a mystery to us and an entity largely unknown. God is beyond our full comprehension and is the essence of the beautiful and wild, untamed chaos. And the wilderness, mirroring God, is its own special chaos. It's not safe. It's filled with possibility and with risk, and often for us, it's a place between desired places. Have you ever taken a really long road where you didn't see a single building for maybe hours on end? That is the wilderness, a place lacking civilization, a place lacking safety. It is the journey between the beginning and the end of something. Now, the wilderness is what makes a story worth telling. It's what makes a life worth living, and an adventure, quite frankly, an adventure. It meets us with these challenges and these questions and these opportunities to forge our own paths. For Jesus, he was met with some really great challenges in his time in the wilderness. He was hungry, he was thirsty, weakened, tempted, and probably, quite frankly, annoyed with the Satan. And he had to face the reality of placing God and others before his own comfort and his very life. Remember, the Satan actually offered him to be the ruler of this world, to be the most powerful entity. And Jesus knew that he could get that, but he put it away for the sake of us. And we have all been to those wilderness places. Many of us may find ourselves in a wilderness right now. And others of us might be staring at the door, the figurative door of our lives, and on the other side of that door you see the wilderness and you know it's a-coming. You know it's out there, and it can be daunting. Most of us, frankly, go kicking and screaming when the wilderness time finds us. We hardly ever go willingly out into that place, and it interrupts our comfort, and we don't want to face it, but it's here. We don't tend to like the wilderness. It's an uncomfortable place. It means challenge. A lot of us, we don't like to be challenged. I mean, challenge, many of us thrive on challenge, but not that kind of challenge. I'm talking about the kind of challenge that looks into your very soul and makes you question everything. The wilderness means a time of personal change. Challenge and risk and change, these are scary things. And I'm reminded, actually, as I wrote this sermon, of all of the people in the church who have ever said to me, well, we've never done it that way. Have you heard that before? Yeah. As pastors, we call that the death rattle of the church. But today, I'd like to dive into personal matters. We know how change goes in the church. Miss Sarah has taught us well. I'm still learning the song. I know it's not that hard, but I'm still learning it. But today I'd like to talk about us as individuals. It's our nature for self-preservation, to protect what we know to be good, to protect what works in our lives, and to avoid any changes, to avoid the hard questions. But let me ask you this, what is life without those challenges? AV team, I didn't tell you this. Thank you. When I was they are so good, y'all. When I was a teenager, my parents took my sister and me to Rome, Italy for the first time. And there was a giant stone there called the Mouth of Truth. And it actually predates Jesus. And it is said that if you stick your hand into the mouth and it does not chomp down on you, then you are good and honorable and you do not lie. But if the mouth closes on your hand, then you are certainly a liar. So we lined up, like every other tourist, to take pictures in front of the Mouth of Truth, and each person put their hand in, and I witnessed this. They were all fine. They left intact. But when it got to be my turn and I stuck my hand into that hole, I realized a fear I did not know that I had. You see, as I placed my hand into the mouth, I felt something that I didn't know what it was touching the tip of my finger. And because I couldn't identify it, I immediately yanked my hand out. And my parents, still to this day, we're talking 18 years later, make fun of me, thinking that I was scared that it was actually going to chomp on my hand. To be honest, there was something in there. I don't know what it was, but it moved, and it was creepy. And I don't like to stick my hand in dark places. That game that they play at Halloween with the cardboard boxes where you stick your hand in, and we know it's grapes, but they say it's eyeballs or something. I don't like that game, okay? It's unsettling to me to put my hand into a place and I can't see what's going on. The wilderness can be like that dark and mysterious place, and I'm so sorry, this is a new microphone. The wilderness can be that dark and mysterious place because it's filled with the unknown. Now, going through change can feel a lot like putting your hand into that mouth of truth. You don't know what's in there. You can't see it. You don't know what's coming, but you just have to go ahead and do it scared anyway. And you have to hope that everything's going to be okay, that mouth of truth is not going to chomp down on your hand. It's going to be fine. And we learn a lot about ourselves when we are placed into these wilderness chapters, what truly matters to us and who we are at our core. And we find that we can do things that we never imagined that we could do before. When we are faced with only the option to go forward, we find a strength in ourselves that we didn't know. And we come face to face with our faith and the scars and the wounds inside of us that have been left unaddressed within ourselves. I do. Sorry, guys, we'll work on this. My ears are unusually small. That's what's going on. We come face to face with our faith when we find things in ourselves that are unresolved. When we have to ask God, why, God, has this happened? Why can't I recover from this? Why can't I move on from this? And it can bring up a lot of pain and confusion. Now, doesn't that sound like the wilderness is a really fun place? It's not. This is why we don't want to go in there. So at this time, I would like to enter into a wilderness space with you all. Figuratively, I am sticking my hand into the mouth of truth once again here, because I'd like to be vulnerable with you all today and share something with you that I have not shared this publicly ever before. But this is a new place for me, and you guys are my church family. And my hope is that hearing this story, that you can find value in it for yourself, whatever your wilderness may be. You're going through all of these changes. I guess you say that what I'm about to tell you is a wilderness chapter of my life layered within other wildernesses that I have been in for a long time. And I guess that's what young adulthood just is. It's these layers of wilderness, and we just feel lost and confused continually, and somehow we just make it through, and someday I hope we figure it all out, like maybe when we're 60 or something. You guys seem pretty wise to me, I don't know. But I'd like to share this with you. Last June, so not even a year ago, I went to go see a doctor to ease my own mind, hoping that I was, just as I felt, young and healthy and filled with options and time. And I had never had any health issues before. In fact, I hadn't been to a doctor since I was 18 years old. So I'm 33 now. I know, it's been a while. But I decided, maybe I should just go get checked out. And I went to the doctor, and I came out hearing that I was exactly as I thought. I'm young, and I'm healthy. But I don't have any time, and I don't have any options, because I have unexplained infertility. Now, I did not realize how badly I actually wanted a child until I heard that I couldn't have one. At least not without several procedures, major surgeries, and IVF. Now, having been divorced for under a year at this point and being completely alone, thousands of miles away from my friends and thousands of miles away from my family, I sat in my car after that appointment and I sobbed like a small child. And I gasped and I used every napkin and tissue I could find, even a newspaper in my car. It was a scene. My center console was completely emptied. Infertility is something that women in the past have been ashamed of. And I could not do the one thing that everybody else could do. All of my friends were on their second, third, fourth babies, and I've been to so many baby showers, and so many of them were just happy surprises, or as they call them, happy little accidents. And they were so celebrated and so joyful. My life already did not look like the life that I had hoped for. One never hopes to get divorced. And now this. Suddenly, time became an enemy for me, and I sat there sobbing, not knowing how I was going to tell my parents, not knowing how I was going to do this by myself. And there it was, that wilderness that I had suddenly been thrown into, and it was so scary and so big. You see, IVF treatment, even with the best of insurance, costs thousands upon thousands of dollars. So I sat there knowing that I would kiss any hope of retirement goodbye. I would kiss any of the savings that I had built up goodbye. I would be looking at potential debt. I would be looking at ruining myself. And the treatments involve heavy medications that make you sick, nightly injections, multiple injections a night, multiple procedures, appointments, counseling sessions. Thank God the doctors require therapy for this. I knew that this would completely change my life if this is what I would choose. And I wouldn't be allowed to drink alcohol. I wouldn't be allowed to have caffeine. That's the hardest thing, giving up coffee. I mean, the first week of it was like hell. I walked into the office and didn't know what day it was. And even worse than that, I wasn't allowed to eat bread. So no tacos. It was awful. I couldn't exercise. Before I came here to meet you all, I actually went to the gym on a daily basis, and I had some nice guns, all right? I couldn't stay out late at night. What are young adults supposed to do? Single young adults. How do we meet other single young adults? We go out, we go to the bar, we stay out late, we have a good time, we eat all the bread, we do all the things, right? So this meant that my dating life would just be gone, right? These choices that I had to make, one would normally make with a partner. I would make them alone. And all of this for a 60% chance at having one child. Just one, 60%. and I'm young and I'm healthy. Now, I didn't tell anybody about this until I had already made my choice. And telling them was absolutely terrifying because there's so much judgment around this topic. No one really talks about this stuff. In fact, it's only just now beginning to make its way into the media. There's a movie in theaters right now. It came out on February 2nd called Scrambled. It got 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. I haven't seen it yet, but it's about this exact thing. The woman who stars in it is 34 years old, her character, when she is faced with this same thing. It's just now making it into the headlines because so many millennials, my doctor told me that about 57% of millennials in their 30s are going through IVF and IUI treatments right now because they are faced with infertility. It was nice to know that I wasn't alone because when you hear that you have to go through this, there's this unexplained sort of loneliness that you feel because anybody that you tell couldn't possibly understand exactly what it feels like. Even if I had a partner, they wouldn't understand what it feels like. My faith through this was tested. I immediately turned to the Bible and I looked up every single woman in there to find stories of infertility, and the mentions of infertility were all answered by a miracle from God. And I'm not Mary, I'm not Elizabeth, I'm not Hannah, I'm not Sarah. God's not going to do that for me. I'm just Emily. And at first, the Bible seemed to not hold any answers. In fact, I began to hate it a bit. In days of old, Christianity would call a woman cursed by God for not being able to bear children. And so I began to ask myself, was this a punishment? But then we read stories of incredible women like Tamar and other courageous women in the Bible who had the resilience and pressed onward with God's blessing. And I decided that this is what I would do. And I would do it scared. But God walks with us through our struggles and our traumas. So I would do it scared, but I would not do it alone. So I decided, knowing that there would be some parts of the treatment when I would need help from people, that I would be open about it. And after all, the medications that I would take would make me very sick, and they did. I'd show up to work and I'd be about to walk in to do somebody's funeral, and I'd have to run to the bathroom and throw up. So I knew that people would notice. So that's when I shared what I was going through with the church. I stuck my hand into that mouth of truth, and it was absolutely terrifying. And as a pastor, I'm in my comfort zone helping others. That's what I like to do. That's why I do this, because I love to help others. I like to visit hospitals and sit by you as you are going through your tough time, and to be there with you and pray with you and empower you. But for me, asking for help was so hard. Before I asked somebody for help with all of this, I actually sat there and I cried, thinking, how could I possibly do this myself? The doctors told me I couldn't do it myself, but maybe I could. Maybe I wouldn't have to ask for help. And it was so scary, but let me remind us all that asking for help is sometimes the most courageous thing that a person can do. And you know what it did? It surprised me. I expected judgment and shame when I told the other people in the church. But what I found was love and support in the church, unlike anything I have ever known before. I heard stories from women who had gone through it themselves and who were going through it as I am going through it. And all of them told me it was so nice to finally have someone come open about it, to be able to talk about it with somebody who actually understands, to not feel so alone. And mothers and fathers would come to me about their daughters or their daughters-in-law, and they would ask me questions, and they'd want to know more about the process, and they wouldn't ask their daughter or daughter-in-law because they didn't want to come across as judgmental or assuming. And I said, it's okay. This is a safe place. Ask whatever you like. And they would report back to me that it actually helped them to understand how they could better support their daughters and their daughters-in-law. So for this became for me an element of ministry that I just was not expecting to have. And most profoundly of all, I found people who were willing and able to come and help me. They wanted to be passengers on this journey with me, giving me shots. That part was I never thought I'd go to a parishioner's house and say, all right, let's go, I had some really great retired nurses in the congregation who said, yeah, come on over to my house at 9 o'clock at night. I will deliver that for you. And you know what? They made jokes about it. They made me laugh. And before I knew it, it was all done with. And it was great. Retired nurses are a blessing, y'all. They are a blessing. And then I had people taking me to surgeries. The first woman I asked was a single woman who had her own child 15 years ago by the same process, back when this was much harder for women. People who were not in my family let me come into their houses because I needed help. People who were not in my family, people who were not previously my friends, woke up at 5:30 in the morning to take me to the hospital, and they would sit there and wait for me and assume responsibility for me when I came out on anesthetics, and they would drive me home, and they would watch over me. It changes one's perception of what family is. The family is the church. And through this whole process, I have found a strength in myself that I did not know I had. And I will say I did have the help of Taylor Swift and her album of Reputation. It's great. If you're ever feeling down, just turn that on and she'll get you through anything. Anything. But I also found out that I have more love for myself than I knew I ever needed. Now, this process is not over. My very first Sunday here, actually, I wasn't here. You might remember. I had been working, but I wasn't here. I was having my 4th surgery for these procedures. And I'm still not done. I will have more procedures. I will have more medications. I will have a major surgery later in the year before anything else comes. And the road ahead is very frightening. It's scary and it's dark. And I don't know who's waiting out there for me or what is in the dark. I think that's what makes the dark scary, is we don't know what is in it. And my hand, figuratively, has been in that mouth of truth for a really long time now. And the wilderness has become like a familiar stranger in my life, almost a companion. Now, I still face the future with a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety. And I still have really hard moments thinking about how this is all going to work. And I know that there's heartbreak in the future. I think that's what makes walking forward so hard. Every woman who goes through this process knows that they will likely have at least 2 miscarriages before it works, if it even works. There's so much heartbreak, so much anxiety, so much trial to go through, but I have hope. And I know that I'm not alone. And I actually asked our pastor nominating committee chairs, Susan and Sarah, as I was interviewing, would this church help me? Would this church be there for me in the future? And they didn't even hesitate. They said, oh yes. This is a church that will love you just as you are. This is a church that welcomes people and loves them and raises them up, because this church is not just a church, this is a family. And every Sunday is like a family reunion. And that sealed the deal for me. I knew I wanted to come. Now, through all of this, I have been sad. I have been angry at and confused by God. And I have no answers from God, because as I said, my infertility is unexplained. Now, I do not know if this will work. So again, I'm being very vulnerable with you all by telling you I'm even going through it, because I don't know if it will work. And I don't know what the future holds or what it looks like. And step by step, I know that God is walking with me, because you all walk with me. And God breathes into me when I need breaks. It's so important to take breaks. Thank you, Ken Johnson, for reminding me to take breaks. And God urges me onward with faith. And he does that through all of you. You all are the evidence that I need. You all are the evidence that we all need. Because each of us is facing a wilderness. We all face it at one point or another. So my story today, I hope it's not your story. But I know that you have a story. And I know that you've been through trials. Life is a wilderness, and each of us carries unspoken burdens. And we wear scars from the past trials that we have endured, and we are the sums of those stories. And they're still being written. So if today you are in a wilderness, if you are finding yourself in a time of unknowns, in a time of change or challenge, maybe you've reached a fork in the road and you don't know which path to take, and you know that you have to move forward, but you don't know which way to go. Or maybe your road has come to an end, and all that's before you is wilderness, literally. The road has stopped. There is no definable path forward. I hope that you know that no matter what you're facing, that you are beloved, that you are beautiful, and you are brave. But I really hope that you know that you are not alone. It's okay to walk forward and to be scared and to be anxious, just as long as we don't give into that temptation to quit or to crawl into the shadows and curl up to be forgotten. Whether it's your job, or maybe you're starting retirement. I hear that that's really scary for some people. The idea of not having a defined purpose in your life to get up and go to an office anymore. And some people greet it with a lot of excitement. I hope one day I will. But I hear that that can be scary. I know that losing a loved one who was a pillar in your life leaves you in a lurch. Maybe you're facing a happy change. Maybe you're getting married. And that can be its own wilderness. Or maybe you're going through a separation or a divorce. Maybe you're facing unemployment right now. These are all scary things. Or maybe you have health issues. Maybe your relationship has tension and you're not sure how to fix it. That's for a lot of us. Whatever you might be facing right now, you are so loved. You are so important. You are so valued and cared for. And it might be terrifying, but that mouth of truth, it is a dark hole. And yeah, you gotta stick your hand in it. And you might feel things that are unpleasant in there. But you gotta do it and know that we're all here with you. And we're not perfect. And we might not be able to fully understand the path that you're walking on right now. But we're here. And as your pastor, I want to take this opportunity to remind you that I'm always here for you. I'm always here for you. You can call me anytime. I will drop what I am doing. If you call the church number and go to the second extension, it reaches my cell phone. And I have gotten up for parishioners at 2 in the morning and rushed to the hospital in my pajamas. My pajamas have cats on them, so be prepared if you call me at 2 in the morning. But I will be there for you. But it's not just me. I don't make this church. You all make this church. Our deacons are here for you. Our prayer team is here to pray for you. And look around this room. You all know so many people in this room. They all love you, and they are here for you. And if this is your first time here, if you're a visitor here, know that this is the kind of place that's going to embrace you. I see an embrace right now. This is the kind of place where people are going to see you as you are and love you anyway, because that's what God teaches us to do. That's the magic of the Round Rock Presbyterian family. I'm so happy to be here. Now, as I found in my wilderness, the church is here to lift us up and love us because that is what God does. The church is here so that we don't have to do this alone. Today, after worship, we're having our annual meeting. And we're going to reflect on the things that happened last year. We had a wilderness last year. I say we, I wasn't here for it, but you all had a wilderness last year. Well, that wilderness time has shifted. And now as we look to the future, we go into the future wilderness. We look into the mouth of truth of 2024 and the wilderness where we will go, and we got to stick our hand in it. And we will venture into the unknowns, and we will write our own story of trial and triumph. And we will find a love where we did not know it grew. And we together will grow from that love in ways that we did not expect. The wilderness is a place of God. It's a place of transformation and change, and those things are scary. I know they're scary. They're scary for me too. But if we walk it together, we will be stronger and better for it. Today we begin Lent as a journey into the next 40 days, as we remember the gift of one another, I hope, and as we hope in God, and we know the love that God gives us can be made stronger as we carry on through the things that we will face out there in that crazy wilderness, in that mouth of truth, in that future which greets us. Friends, we are not alone, and that is the gift of God for us, and it is God who leads us into the future, whatever it may hold. And it's scary, but we're going to do it scared, and we're going to do it together. Amen.